Greetings. Glad that you can be with me today. I'm Steve Cole, the pastor of the First Methodist Church in Oswego, Kansas, and the West Mineral Methodist Church in West Mineral, Kansas. And today we're going to be looking at a sermon looking back at what happened when the people left Egypt, right? And went out into the wilderness, and Moses was leading them. They're headed for the promised land, right? God had promised them, I've got this land for you. Moses gets them there. They're ready. They're right there on the edge. And Moses sends out 12 spies to go into the land, check it out, find out what the situation is, and then they're going to report back. But they go for 40 days. They're gone, checking out this new land, and they come back. And here we're going to be looking at their report that they had when they came back from Numbers chapter 13, verses 26 to 30. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them, to the whole assembly, and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land in which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw the descendants of Anak there. And the Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea along the Jordan. Then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. May God add a blessing to the reading, the hearing, and the understanding of his word. Later, because these people, 10 of the 12 spies, had a negative response, 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, said, we can do it. And later on, because those 10 said we can't do it, and the people agreed. The people agreed with the 10 who said we couldn't do it. And so in Numbers 14:30 it says, not one of you will enter the land I swore with uplifted hand to make your home, except Caleb and Joshua. Yeah. The people had gotten out of slavery in Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea and are living in the wilderness, totally dependent upon God. He's provided manna for them to eat. There's a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And he's provided for them water to drink. They have all their needs met. And still, they gripe and complain to Moses. We want to go back to Egypt. Why did you bring us out here in this wilderness? Right? Yeah. In the passage that we read, it said, the Lord said to Moses, send some men to explore the land of Canaan, which I am giving to the Israelites. So they sent 12 men in, and they looked, but they came to this one point. It is indeed a land flowing with milk and honey. It's a good place. But, they said, but, the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. They didn't think they could do it. But 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, a land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. 10 of them said, we can't do it. But Caleb and Joshua said, we can. Well, we can't, but with the Lord's help, we can, right? They needed the Lord's help. And with the Lord's help, we can do it. What were the consequences for their lack of faith? Everyone that's over 20 years old would not enter the land. They would continue to be there in the wilderness for another 40 years. Wow. The lesson is that it took the people so long to learn that they needed to depend on God for his guidance. They've been brought out of slavery. They've crossed the Red Sea. They've had water to drink and food to eat. And yet, they still didn't have the faith they needed. Wow. I kind of wonder, if I had been one of those 12 spies, and I saw what they saw, would I be like Caleb and Jacob, or would Joshua, or would I have been the same as the other 10? I can't tell you. I'd like to say, yeah, I'd like to be like them and say, yeah, we can do it, but, we can't say for sure. Everyone else was looking at the size of the people and the cities that were fortified, but Caleb and Joshua said, with the Lord's help, we can do it. Wow. Some of the people that first explored this part of the country, what we call Kansas now, I think Zebulon Pike was one of them, wandered into this part of the country. There hadn't been very many Europeans in this part of the country yet. Looked it over and said, it's a wasteland, the great American desert. And he was referring to the part of the country that we now call Kansas, and said it is uninhabitable by people depending on agriculture for their subsistence. How about that? That was their first impressions of what this part of the country was like. But yet, there were some people that disagreed. My great-great-grandfather was one of them. He left Michigan right after the Civil War and came to Kansas to homestead. He was one of many that came here and didn't believe that. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy coming here and eking out a living in what we call the Great American Desert. But they did it. They found a way. The thing is, that what it really boils down to is if a person says they can't do something, they won't do it. They won't be able to do it. There's an old saying, can't never did anything. Yeah. We have to have faith that it can be done. This is basketball season, and I have a friend that his niece was playing basketball. And he encouraged her to shoot the basketball every chance she got. He said, you miss all the shots you don't take. That's true. You've got to take some shots. You may not make every one of them, but, you're not going to make it unless you shoot it. Right? So, we need to be encouraged by that and do those things. Looking back at the passage, what did the people say? We went into the land and you sent us. It does flow with milk and honey, and here is fruit. But the people there are powerful and very large. As we all come to various different things in our lives, challenges every now and then, that we wonder, how are we going to do that? And we might have something like a health problem or an economic or financial situation. And when we first think about it, we say, I can't do this. It might be something that's going to require surgery or treatments. And we can make that decision. Do I get the surgery? Do I take the treatments? Or do I let nature take its course? Well, for each person, it's a little bit different. Each person, it's a case-by-case study. But for the person that doesn't do anything, well, the the results are inevitable. But for the person that says, the odds are against me, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now again, it depends on the individual and how old they are and what their health is like otherwise. But that's one of those things that those challenges sometimes that we have to face. And same thing is true of financial things. We can look at our situation and say, oh, there's no way I can ever. And I can remember being there when I was younger and the kids were young and seeing how much everything cost and how much money was coming in. And I thought, how am I ever going to get out of debt? Oh my gosh, but it took time, but we got there. Yeah, we got there. So yeah, the idea is to not give up and keep on keeping on. And but the main thing is looking for the Lord to be our help, to be our guide, to be the one that helps us as we go through those things in life. That will be a challenge. And we can throw up our hands and say, oh, it's impossible. I can't do it. Okay? That may well be true on our own. But we look to the Lord to be the one that helps us as we go through those things, to be the one that we can do. And from a human perspective, it might seem impossible, but we put it in God's hands and ask God to help us as we go through those things and allow Him to be the one that guides us. And that's kind of what the people finally, and we know they did eventually get there. It took 40 years before they finally decided that, yeah, we can do it. And it doesn't mean everything went easy for them. They still had battles to fight. They had things to do. Once they got there, it just didn't, the people just didn't lay down and say, okay, here it is. Yeah, they had to work for it. And that's the same thing with a lot of things in life, that we need to, look and see what the situation is. Yeah. The people wanted to go back to Egypt, but there was no going back. They had to move forward. And it's like that for us as well. We move forward. Yeah. We had a bishop one time that said, we were perfectly, the church at the time, he said, we're perfectly prepared to evangelize the world if the 1950s ever return. That was the thing. 1950s aren't going to return. So we have to move on and do things maybe a little differently than we did back in the 1950s or the 60s or even the 70s. But we know that God is still here with us to help us as we go through this time, and that we can, with His help, we're able to continue to do the things that He wants us to do. Thank you all for coming. I hope that this was helpful, and I know that God goes with us to guide us, lead us, and help us today and every day. Amen.